Hello and welcome back to another video. Today we're going down under to have a look at the A-League, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the teams, players, rules and transfers that you can make when you're going down under. So as normal in one of these league guides, let's get straight into the squad rules. Thankfully the A-League actually has a very good website for squad rules, so if you want to see a bit more of this, just Google A-League squad rules and you can find the exact wording that they use on the website. But I'm just going to be paraphrasing some of this now so you get a brief understanding of the squad rules and you don't have to go super in depth into some jargon. So let's get started with the top kind of player that they have. They have a special rule in Australia that I've never seen anywhere else called a guest player. So this player can be on unlimited amount of money. They can spend however much transfer they want him and wages, but he's only allowed to play 14 A-League matches a season. Australian clubs can also spend unlimited amounts of money on A-League players who are under 23 and have come through the club's youth system. Again, unlimited money can be spent on players that have given at least 4 years of consecutive service to a club. There are also some rules that you can't really implement in FIFA, such as scholarship players, salary cap banking and relocation expenses, so we won't need to cover those in this video. The squad can actually have between 18 and 23 players, with a minimum of 2 goalkeepers and a minimum of 3 Australian players who are under 23. The squad can also only have a maximum of 5 foreign players, so the chances are you're going to have around 15 overage players from Australia, 5 foreign players and 3 young players. An A-League player will have to earn at least $1,000 Australian dollars a year, which is about the same as £550 if you're playing in pounds, or €600 in euros. So that's probably the longest I've ever spent talking about the squad rules in a video. They're not very complicated, but there's just a few different sections that you have to look out for. I do think the guest player is a pretty interesting player. You could even get Ronaldo if you've really fancied him and only played him for 14 games a season, which I think is very interesting. So now that we have these players, you'll want to find some under 23s to fill out your squad. Of course you do this through the youth academy most of the time, so you'll want to know where to send all your youth scouts to find the most realistic players, I'm sure. As you'd expect, the most common nationality in the A-League is Australian, with 186 of the team's players being from Australia. Next up you have New Zealand, which again you probably will expect, and I would advise you scout both Australia and New Zealand. And then you've got a few of the older English players, older Spanish players and a few Japanese players coming through. Beyond this, there's a smattering of Sudanese, Curaçaoans, Italians, Polish, Germans and Scots. So really, you've got these 2 guaranteed slots, and then I would probably try and scout somewhere like Japan or China just to try and keep it a tiny bit more realistic. So now you have your young players, and you might want to know what kind of rating players you'll want for the rest of your squad. To get a quick glimpse of what kind of ratings you can expect in the A-League, the top 6 players, 5 of them are Spanish and 1 is Italian, and they are all between 74 and 77 rated. You have some famous names in there like Bennett, Diego Castro, Alessandro Diamanti, Susaeta and Javi Lopez, who've all played in top flights recently. Of course, you can probably tell that these players are all between 32 and 37 years old, with older players being most of the high-rated players in the league. If you're wanting to keep it fully realistic, you'll probably want to pick up older players from the Spanish 2nd Division, Italian 1st Division lower level teams, and League One and the Championship in England. This is where most of the players come from, and you'll find people like Ryan Shotton and Adam Lafondra playing out there who Championship fans will know pretty well. There isn't a huge amount of potential out there in the Australian League at the moment, with some of the better players for potential being around 75 potential if they do grow the 20 points that they are currently under it. A lot of the higher potential players in the league who are young are Australian, as you'd imagine, because it's not really the most interesting league for young players to want to try and strike a career out in. So now you probably know what kind of players you'll be targeting, and you'll know where your youth academy scouts are all going, but what kind of teams are actually in the league? So the A-League has 12 teams at the moment, the 2 best being Macarthur and Sydney FC. Both these teams have some of the better players that have been bought from foreign teams in the whole league, and they also have some of the higher potential players and the biggest budgets. Of course, the biggest budget is very subjective, as all the teams start off with the exact same transfer budget, but the wage budgets at Sydney and Macarthur are much higher than the likes of Central Coast Mariners. Speaking of the Central Coast Mariners, they are currently the worst team in the whole of Australian football, with a lot of potential to grow and a pretty interesting looking kit, I think they would be a very good road to glory team. The next worst is Newcastle Jets and Brisbane Roar, but if you pick Newcastle Jets, maybe there is a chance that you could eventually try and win the league with both Newcastle Jets and Newcastle United in the same save. That could be pretty interesting if you do give that a go. Make sure to let me know on my Discord. Some more challenges that I've noticed is the current top scorer in the league ever is Bobô, who got 27 goals in a single season. He's currently 37 years old and he's just returned to Sydney FC. In probably his last season, so in this last season, can you make the Brazilian beat his record? He definitely still has the ability with 71 finishing and decent strength and shot power. He of course has lacked some of the speed he probably had when he was younger, but I think he's still ready for you to try and make him beat that 27 goal record, especially if you can pad the stats against the likes of Newcastle and Central Coast Mariners. Australian football has been lacking heroes recently, with Tim Cahill, Harry Kewell and Mark Viduka all retiring. It's ready for you to create some new heroes for Australia to get behind. Can you get the Socceroos to win a World Cup? I think that would be one of the hardest challenges, especially if you go for an all-Australian team in the Australian League. So that's all I have for today's video on Australian football. I hope you can tell, but I do actually have quite a lot of passion for Australian culture. I'm a big fan of Australian music, as you've probably found out listening to some of my older videos where I included Australian bands. I've always been pretty obsessed with Australia when it's World Cup. They've always been my second team after England, as I'm sure you can tell I am English. And as somewhat of a Formula 1 and cricket fan, you've got the likes of Daniel Ricciardo and Ricky Ponting and Shane Warne that I've always been trying to idolise and emulate growing up as a child. I'd love to hear anyone's opinion if you are Australian on how you think I got on with this video. If you've got anything that you think other people should know about, feel free to drop it in the comments, because I'm sure a lot of people do read those after the video is finished. But thank you for watching, and if you want to see more team and league guides like this in the future, hit the subscribe button, and if you like the video, like the video. That's all I've got time for today though, so thank you and goodbye.